Heartwarming redemption. Correctional officer discovers hidden love after unexpected tragedy at 30. Jake stood in the rain-soaked parking lot, the clouds reflecting the gray shadows in his heart. He was a correctional officer, the weight of his uniform heavy on his shoulders. The town whispered behind his back, "What a shame," they'd say, looking at him like he wore a scarlet letter. There he was, a once bright-eyed kid from the neighborhood, now trapped in a life that felt like a prison of its own. He was supposed to be chasing dreams, but instead, he slipped into the role of his deceased father, burying his own aspirations under bills and family responsibilities after that tragic accident. Now, he wasn't just battling the disdain of the townsfolk. He was haunted by his father's memory and the drag of obligation. Each day blended into the next, a monotonous cycle of locking up inmates behind rusting bars and donning the shield of a job that felt more like a curse than a calling. His mother's tired eyes kept him grounded. He was doing it for her. But with every scornful glance from a passerby, Jake felt further away from the boy he used to be. That kid had dreams. He wanted to be a teacher, a mentor. But the dreams faded like the paint on the old schoolhouse where he once played, leaving behind echoes of what could have been. But the world shifted that fateful Tuesday when a young inmate he'd been mentoring passed away in a tragic mishap. Jake's heart shattered. The boy, full of potential and hope, gone in a breath. Guilt gnawed at him, suffocating any flicker of ambition he might still grasp. If only I'd done more. He replayed the events, aching to rewrite the outcome and save a life instead of surviving another day in isolation. Before the sun slipped away, Jake made a decision. He would honor the lost life. With trembling hands, he organized a community event to raise awareness for at-risk youth. It was a chance to show the townsfolk that there was more to his work. Redemption lay in the community he served. He felt a spark finally, something to believe in. Then, Sarah returned. The girl next door with whom he shared slips of laughter and innocent dreams strolled back into his life, a beacon from the past. They easily fell into sync, planning for the event, fueled by shared memories and a desire to make a difference. Under the warm light of unfinished conversations, laughter poured out, and for the first time in a while, Jake felt a surge of hope. Could she see him beyond the badge? Could he be more than what others thought? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the event approached, whispers bubbled questions about Jake's integrity, his worthiness of love and community. Would Sarah stand by him when the judgment fell? He fought against the uncertainty, but the walls of scrutiny tightened. The bittersweet blend of hope and fear churned inside him. Just when it seemed the winds were shifting, a revelation threatened to blow it all away. Could he prove he was more than a badge? Could he face down the barrenness of loss and still step forward into a brand new beginning? The community was watching, and so was his heart. Where did this love stand in a world full of judgments? As Jake stood at the precipice, he knew one thing for sure: he was ready to fight for hope, love, and the chance to make a difference. Would it be enough? The days rolled on, each one bringing the event closer. Jake felt the weight of anticipation and dread. He spent hours preparing, plastering flyers in community centers, and talking to anyone who would listen. Each conversation was a chance to spark interest, but also a reminder of the judgment that loomed over him. He is just a guard, some would say as they eyed him warily. But Jake pushed through the unease, determination fueled by the innocent soul he lost. As he and Sarah worked together, their connection deepened. Late nights turned into laughter-filled moments under the soft glow of string lights. They reminisced about childhood dreams, the last time they played on the old swings. "Remember when we thought we could change the world?" Sarah laughed, her voice a melody that wrapped around him. "I think we can still make a difference, Jake." It filled him with warmth, igniting hope in a heart that felt so damaged. The day of the event dawned bright and clear. The small park was decorated with colorful banners and tables meant for sharing stories and resources. Jake stood watching the families gather, a flicker of anxiety swirling in his stomach. Would they see him as the man he hoped to be, or judge him by the uniform he wore? Hey, look who it is. Sarah's enthusiastic voice broke through his thoughts. She approached him, her hair playfully tousled by the wind. You ready? As he glanced into her sparkling eyes, Jake felt a wave of calm wash over him. Yeah, let us do this. They moved into the crowd, engaging with adults and playing with kids. Every smile they exchanged with strangers filled Jake with joy. Then something caught his eye. He spotted the faces of the boy's family. A pang of sorrow clutched at his heart as they hovered at the edge of the park. Would they resent him? The fear nearly paralyzed him. But Sarah, ever intuitive, sensed his turmoil. Maybe you should talk to them, she suggested gently. They might be hurting, too. You can make a connection. Jake's heart raced. Was he ready? He took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, let us go. As they approached, Jake felt his palms sweat. But the family looked up. The mother's eyes were filled with an unspeakable sadness. I just wanted to say I'm so sorry, he started, his voice barely above a whisper. I know you're hurting, and I wish I could have done more for him. The father's face crumpled, but instead of anger, Jake saw pain and gratitude. Thanks for being here, he replied, his voice cracking. It means a lot. In that moment, Jake felt a bittersweet connection, understanding that grief didn't divide, but rather united them. They both wanted to turn tragedy into something meaningful, a legacy. Can we share his story today? The mother asked, hope shining through her tears. Jake nodded, his heart swelling. Absolutely. We'll make sure he's remembered. The event continued, the atmosphere shifting towards healing. Jake felt lighter, feeling the burdens he carried begin to dissipate. As evening set in, the park was alive with conversation, music, and laughter. In another corner, Jake found Sarah, deep in discussion with recruits from the local high school, inspired by the stories shared. See, she said, catching his eye. You're making a difference. Her encouragement fueled a flame in him. This was what he wanted to be more than just a correctional officer, to be a mentor, a friend, a guiding light to the lost. But just then, a voice broke through the crowd. So, what do you have to say for the boy's death? It cut through the moment like a knife. Jake froze, the laughter fading into muffled whispers. Every eye turned towards him, expectant and yet unforgiving. Could he stand tall, face the reality of the pain, and still emerge as a beacon of hope? The crowd's gaze felt heavy, the truth weighing on him. Would this moment define him? As Jake's heart raced, the air thick with uncertainty, he knew he had to respond. Something within him stirred, electric and raw. Would he meet judgment with honesty? Or would fear steal his chance to break free? The choice hung in the air, and all eyes were on him. Jake felt the world shrink around him. The laughter of children and the cheerful chatter faded into a dull murmur. All he could hear was the pounding of his heart, each beat echoing the weight of the question thrown at him. He stood there, frozen in a moment that seemed endless, searching for the right words amid the heavy silence that blanketed the park. He glanced at Sarah, her face a mix of concern and encouragement. She stepped closer, as if willing her strength to him. It reminded him of the night they spoke about their dreams beneath the stars, how hope could be like a beacon in the darkness. Look, I know, he began, hesitating. I know the pain can be unbearable. I felt it myself. I lost my brother a few years ago. The words were raw and clumsy, but they spilled out. I thought I could change things, too. Save him. Just like I wish I could have saved your son. The crowd shifted, the tension palpable. Some faces softened, others still held anger. Jake could taste the fear lacing his words. What if they didn't want to hear his truth? But when had he ever been the type to shy away? I've seen kids come into my facility, lost and alone. I've seen the struggles, the hurt, the downward spiral of choices. He took a breath, steadying himself. But that doesn't define them. Every moment is a chance to change, to grow. I didn't save my brother, but I won't let his memory fade. I won't let your son's memory fade either. The mother's gaze was unwavering, her eyes shining with unshed tears. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling. Her question hung in the air like a whisper from the universe. He felt the weight of a possibility blooming inside him, something that could lead to transformation, not just his own, but maybe even hers. I'm here to honor him, he declared, his voice growing stronger. Together, we can create a legacy in his name. We can show these kids what it means to heal, to choose differently. Your son's story deserves to be told, so no one else has to suffer the way we did. As the sincerity of his words echoed in the crowd, a shift occurred. The anger in some faces softened while empathy began to weave through the air. And that's when Jake saw it, a flicker of hope lighting the mother's expression. She nodded slowly, the breath she held releasing a weight he didn't know he carried. There were murmurs now. Conversations sparked from the raw honesty in the air. People in the crowd began to nod. Others shared their own stories of loss and redemption, creating a tapestry of connection where despair once resided. Jake felt a surge of liberation as each story unfolded, each voice joining them in a chorus of understanding. It wasn't just about him or the boy, it was about everyone. He looked over at Sarah, who smiled back at him, pride shining in her eyes. But just when hope seemed to blanket the park, the sharp voice dripped with skepticism cut through again. And what happens next? Just talk? Is that really enough? A knot tightened in Jake's stomach. He realized this was just the beginning. Talk was powerful, yes, but it needed to lead somewhere. The ripple effect had to turn into action. As he panned the crowd, taking in the faces filled with both hope and doubt, he felt something shift again within him. The fire of determination ignited yet another level. They needed a plan, a way to keep the momentum going, to translate their grief into something transformative and lasting. What if we hosted monthly gatherings like this? Jake suggested, his heart racing with excitement. Where we come together to share, educate, and uplift one another. We can create a support group. What if? The earnest faces looked intrigued, a spark of inspiration igniting conversations of potential. But the real question swirling in Jake's mind was, would they trust him enough to follow this vision? Would they feel it was enough to lead them out of the darkness? As uncertainty washed over him again, the shadow of doubt crept in. But Jake pushed it aside. He had taken this leap, and regardless of the outcome, one thing was clear. He wouldn't. He turned back now. With determination setting in, he glanced towards Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. It was time to embrace the journey ahead, but would the community open their hearts wide enough to change their stories? As the conversations around him swelled with possibility, all Jake could do was hope. Hope that they would connect, rise, and take action together. The path ahead was uncertain, but one truth remained: this was only the beginning. The murmur of the crowd grew louder as conversations sparked around Jake. It was electric, the air thick with the brewing connections and understanding. But still, one voice stood out above the others, filled with doubt and challenges. How do we know this isn't just another empty promise? The voice was steady and resolute, belonging to a tall man with tired eyes that revealed a life of struggles. Jake could almost feel the weight of that man's experiences pressing on him. We don't, Jake admitted, his heart pounding but his voice steady. But we can make it real. We start by being here for one another, sharing our stories. It's a chance to build something stronger than pain. The crowd quieted as Jake's words settled. He held onto the man's gaze, hoping to bridge the gap of skepticism. Every one of you has something to give, a story that matters. Together, we can turn our grief into action. We can create a movement, no more children falling through the cracks. Another voice chimed in, softer this time, a woman with graying hair and a trembling hand. I don't know if I can share my pain, but maybe just listening could help. Yes, Jake felt a surge of agreement ripple through him. Every story matters, whether it's shared or just felt among us. We build strength in community, empowering each other to face our fears. The tall man's face softened, and the crowd shifted again, a swell of murmurs indicating their willingness to engage. Jake felt a flicker of hope spark within him. They were on the verge of unveiling something profound, something that could break the chains of their collective sorrow. Let us start with the next gathering 2 weeks from today, he suggested, voice firm but inviting. We can brainstorm ideas for activities, support systems, whatever we think could help us connect more deeply. We need a point of focus, something to rally around. A man to the right raised his hand. What about a memorial? A place where we can honor those we've lost? Yes, Jake responded, his heart racing. A place that reminds us of their stories. We can create something beautiful to celebrate their lives instead of letting grief chain us. It'll remind us of why we need to support each other. The positive reactions grew. Heads nodded together, a sense of unity blossoming in the energy swirling around them. Jake felt relief wash over him. Maybe this plan could truly take root. Let us also invite professionals, counselors, speakers, people who can help guide us, Sarah added, stepping forward. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. We can create programs to develop our skills, to build resilience in our young people. Jake met her gaze, gratitude swelling in his chest. They were a team now, bound by purpose and shared belief. But lingering worries still buzzed in his mind. How would they fund these initiatives? Would they be able to sustain the momentum? Just then, the mother of the boy whose memory originally brought them to this point stepped forward, her voice firm despite the tears glistening in her eyes. Whatever it takes, I'm in. My son deserves to be remembered. We all deserve to heal, to create a future without this pain and loss. Let's move forward together. A chorus of agreement erupted around her, voices rising in a wave of enthusiasm that seemed to push away fears. Jake absorbed their energy, feeling fortified by their collective strength. You see? Jake spoke, empowered. We're already creating that legacy. It starts right here, right now. He let himself take a deep breath, exhaling the doubt that still clung to him. Then, before he could lose the momentum, he raised his hands, still settling into the power of the moment. Next Saturday, let us meet back here. Bring your ideas, your hopes, your fears. Together, we'll create something that will honor our loved ones and uplift this community. As the crowd cheered, Jake recognized he had stepped into something bigger than himself, something that began with pain, but promised to bloom into something beautiful. Yet, even with all of that shared hope, deep down in his heart remained a question. Would they be resilient enough when faced with the challenges that came? As he looked into the crowd's eager faces, he couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was still ahead of them. How would they navigate the storms that lay in wait, testing the bonds they had just begun to forge? The following week meant a whirlwind of preparation. Jake spent his days in a flurry of notes, phone calls, and planning sessions. With each passing moment, he felt the mounting pressure of expectations, but also a sense of warmth growing within him. This was bigger than himself now. It encompassed the spirits of those they had lost. Sarah was at his side every step of the way, bouncing ideas around like a couple of kids brainstorming for a school project. What if we held workshops on coping strategies? She suggested one afternoon, her blue eyes alight with enthusiasm. We could teach everyone tools to navigate their grief, share techniques to handle the stress. That's brilliant, Jake replied, feeling that familiar spark of hope flickering brighter. And we can also have a section for kids. Activities to keep them engaged while their parents participate. Maybe even art therapy? They brainstormed late into the evening, driven by a shared determination that pulsed through them like a lifeblood. But as the ideas flowed, shadows loomed over Jake's mind. The logistics were daunting. He began drafting a budget, but each number felt heavy with uncertainty. How could they afford counseling services? The next Saturday was met with bustling energy. As people arrived, a mix of excitement and apprehension filled the air. Murmurs of encouragement floated through the crowd. Jake stood at the front, his heart racing as he absorbed the faces of those who had become part of this journey. Thank you all for being here, he started, his voice quaking but steady. We're here not just to mourn, but to uplift and transform. Together we'll build a space that honors those we miss dearly. The group was more engaged than he had expected, each suggestion met with eager nods and vibrant enthusiasm. A young father proposed organizing community picnics as a way for families to connect, while another person stressed the importance of creating a support network online for those who couldn't physically attend. As the energy surged, a familiar face pushed through the crowd, a slight woman with tired eyes. I couldn't stay away, she said softly, her voice barely audible. It was the mother of the boy they had once rallied for, and her presence tugged at Jake's heart. I want to remember him, but I also want healing. I want others to find hope. Jake nodded, feeling the gravity of her words. We'll carry his memory forward, I promise. This is about turning pain into something beautiful. At the end of the gathering, he watched the mingling groups, laughter cutting through the heavy air for the first time in too long. But amidst the warmth, he felt that familiar anxiety creeping back. They had laid the groundwork, but did they truly have what it took to sustain it all? Words were one thing, action was another. Just as he turned to share his thoughts with Sarah, a commotion broke out at the door. A commotion that quickly turned to disbelief. Someone yelled to call for help. A young man lay sprawled outside, seemingly unconscious, And with no time to waste, Jake lunged forward, heart hammering in his chest. "Stay back," he shouted to the crowd, pushing through the throng of bodies. What had occurred? What had they stumbled into now? He felt the weight of his fears crash against hope. Would this new challenge deter their progress, or would they rally as a community once more? The crowd hushed, anticipation mingling with dread, as he raced toward what could become a moment of reckoning. Jake pushed through the crowd, his heart pounding fiercely. The ground felt shaky beneath him as he approached the young man, lying sprawled on the sidewalk. Unconscious, the boy's face was pale, and his limbs lay awkwardly. Jake felt a rush of urgency surge within him, his instincts kicking in. "Someone call 911. He shouted again, the words echoing in the silent air. People moved, some stepped back, and others edged forward with anxious faces, their murmurs shifting from joyful connection to instinctive fear. Jake knelt beside the young man, checking for a pulse. It was weak, but it was there. He felt a rush of relief, but it was quickly overshadowed by a wave of anxiety. What if the ambulance didn't arrive in time? What if the boy was alone, lost in a world that felt so chaotic and unforgiving? He glanced up to see the crowd forming a tight circle around him. Their faces reflected a blend of worry and hope. Sarah pushed through, her face a mask of concern. "Do you know him?" she asked, kneeling beside him, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't think so," Jake replied, focusing on the young man's chest, willing it to rise and fall with each breath. "But whoever he is, we need to keep him stable." Time stretched as the minutes ticked away with agonizing slowness. Jake turned his attention to the crowd, who watched with bated breath. "We need to clear some space. Step back, give him some air," he called, feeling the pressure of all those eyes on him. Slowly, the crowd began to back away, and amidst the murmurs, Jake noticed the familiar tired mother from earlier inching forward, a look of recognition dawning on her face. "That is my son," she cried out, her voice breaking. "Oh God, that is my son, Tommy." The rawness of her emotions sliced through Jake like a knife. What had they stumbled into? This was a moment more profound than they could have prepared for. He steadied himself, pulling the mother gently toward him. "We're going to help him," he assured her, finding strength in his words. "Stay with me." She knelt beside them, tears streaming down her cheeks. He could see how much she loved him simply in the way she looked at him, despite the unthinkable fear etched across her features. At that moment, Jake understood that their calling to honor loss had transformed into something deeper, an urgent need to safeguard life. "Tommy, can you hear me?" she pleaded, brushing back sweat-soaked hair from his forehead. "Please, wake up." The desperation in her voice echoed Jake's own feelings. Finally, sirens wailed in the distance, and the crowd parted. Help was on the way. But Jake felt something shift inside him. It was as if he were standing on the edge of not just a community event, but rather a tightly woven tapestry of stories, pains, and moments of profound love that could heal even the deepest wounds. As paramedics rushed to the scene, Jake realized this gathering wasn't just about grief. It was a living testament to resilience, connection, and the sense of collective caring that grows stronger in adversity. He held the mother's hand tightly as they moved alongside the paramedics, as if anchoring her in a storm. Would they revive Tommy? Would this boy, drifting between life and death, bring them a new beginning or another heartbreak? The last thing Jake heard before the paramedics whisked them away was a voice inside him whispering, "Tragedy can birth hope, too." Just like that, he was left pondering, could they nurture this fragile bond among them into something enduring? And while they awaited answers, he felt a haunting question linger in the air. Would they be ready to face the next challenge that loomed on the horizon? The sirens grew louder, drowning out the noise of the crowd. Although the paramedics hurried to work, time felt frozen for Jake. He found himself holding the mother's hand tighter, trying to offer her some semblance of strength amidst the chaos unfolding around them. Tommy lay still, fingers entwined with his mother's, her heartbroken whispers filling the air as she urged him to fight, to wake up. The paramedics moved swiftly, methodically. They checked Tommy's vitals, their expressions firm but compassionate. One of them locked eyes with Jake for a brief second, a shared acknowledgement of fear, urgency, and the weight of responsibility. "Is he going to be okay?" the mother asked, her voice rising sharply above her grief. It pierced through the din, and Jake could feel the collective breath of the crowd hitch in their throats. Everyone was holding on to hope, grasping for any signs of optimism. "Ma'am, we're doing everything we can," the lead paramedic replied, his tone professional but soft. "We need you to step back for a moment." As the mother reluctantly retreated into the shadows, the air grew heavy. Jake turned to Sarah, who was watching with wide eyes, her worry palpable. "What if he doesn't make it?" she whispered, a tremor in her voice. Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. "We can't think like that. We have to believe he will," he said, trying to summon belief more for himself than for her. They had witnessed too much suffering recently. The weight of another loss felt insurmountable. Minutes slipped away while the paramedics worked, and with each passing second, Jake sensed the crowd's energy shift. They were no longer just onlookers. They were a community, holding one another's gaze, sharing this heavy burden together. From the corner of his eye, he caught sight of a little girl clutching a stuffed animal, her large eyes filled with innocent confusion. A pang of sorrow hit him. She deserved joy, not this feeling of despair hanging around like a storm cloud. The paramedics finally loaded Tommy onto a stretcher, his body limp but still fighting. As they rushed him into the waiting ambulance, Jake felt a clenching ache in his heart. "Will you follow them?" he asked the mother, who was now visibly trembling, torn between loyalty to her son and the fear of losing herself in grief. "Of course. I have to go," she replied, her voice barely a whisper, drained yet determined. Jake made a split-second decision. "I'll drive you. Just hold on." Without waiting for a response, he led her to his car, and they jumped inside, leaving the crowd behind. The drive to the hospital was charged with anxiety. Every stoplight felt painfully long. Each second was a reminder of their shared uncertainty. What if the mother began, her voice cracking? Jake parked without thinking. He turned to face her, daring to offer a glimmer of comfort. "They're going to do everything they can. He's a fighter. You taught him to be strong," Jake said, hoping his words would console. As they raced into the hospital, Jake felt a flicker of connection with the mother. They were united in their love for Tommy, even amid this storm. Would they become a family forged in adversity? Suddenly, a high-pitched scream pulled his attention. In the chaos, another crisis unfolded. An elderly man had collapsed in the waiting area. Without hesitating, Jake jumped into action, remembering the earlier urgency, and the mother followed, surprise lighting her eyes. "Help me," Jake shouted, plunging back into a role he hadn't signed up for but felt drawn to. Maybe they couldn't save everyone, but together they could face anything. As they worked frantically, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was only the beginning. What if this tragedy opened doors to unexpected relationships, new paths, and hidden love? With the hospital's fluorescent lights blaring down like a spotlight, Jake could only wonder, would they all emerge whole on the other side of this heartache? The elderly man's face was pale, his breathing shallow. Jake knelt beside him, feeling the frantic pulse beneath his fingers. The air smelled of antiseptic, sharp and sterile, but all Jake could focus on was the trembling body before him. "Stay with us, sir," he urged, his voice steady even though his heart raced. "Call for help. Someone get a nurse." The mother shouted, her voice rising amidst the chaos, but Jake was already on it. He shot a glance past her to see a nurse running towards them, her expression one of calm that cut through the frenzy. "Let me through," she shouted, and Jake shifted back, making way for her. In the split second that he looked away from the man, he found the mother's eyes, wide and fearful. It was a glance filled with desperation, but Jake couldn't linger on it. The elderly man needed focus. The nurse reached the elderly man. "What happened?" she asked, quickly assessing the situation. Jake explained as clearly as he could. "He just collapsed. No prior warning," he said, his fingers still pressed against the man's wrist. The nurse moved with practiced ease, calling out for equipment and directing bystanders away. As her voice echoed in the waiting area, it reaffirmed Jake's sense of purpose, grounding him amid the confusion. Minutes felt like hours. Jake glanced at the mother who stood frozen, a mix of admiration and worry flooding her features. What would she do if Tommy's situation was similar? The thought consumed him just as much as the urgency of the moment. He caught a glimpse of Sarah standing back, her little stuffed animal clutched tightly to her chest. The confusion in her eyes mirrored his own. How could they be in a place filled with hope, yet be surrounded by so much pain? Jake! A voice called out, snapping him back. It was the nurse again, motioning for his assistance. Grab that oxygen tank, she instructed, and Jake sprang into action, feeling adrenaline surge through him. As he rushed to bring the tank over, the weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders. When he returned, the elderly man's color was returning, faint but promising. The nurse worked steadily, her hands firm but gentle. Stay with us, Mr. Lawson, she encouraged, a soothing melody amid the panic. As Jake stood there, shoulder to shoulder with the mother, everything shifted. He could sense her fear lay not just for her son, but also for the stranger who was now holding on to life in the frailest of ways. They were all in this together. Then, he caught her gaze again. You're strong, Jake whispered to her, finding confidence in each word. We're going to get through this. She nodded, though tears glistened in her eyes. For the first time, a sense of certainty sparked between them. Just then, a soft cry broke the tension behind them. Jake turned slowly. The little girl had dropped her stuffed animal, her face crumpling with dismay. Instinctively, he bent down to pick it up and handed it to her. She beamed, a bright light piercing through the darkness that had enveloped them all. It was a reminder that hope flickers even in the direst moments. Thank you, Sarah exclaimed, her small hands wrapping tightly around the tattered bear as if it were the most precious thing in the world. And for just a moment, Jake felt the tension ease within him. They could still find moments of joy even in this chaos. But that moment didn't last long. The emergency room doors swung open again, and there stood a doctor, urgency radiating from him. He quickly scanned the room. Who's with Tommy? He demanded, and Jake felt his heart leap into his throat. That question loomed larger than anything else. Would they really be okay? As dread settled around him like an unwelcome cloak, he steeled himself for whatever news would follow. The mother, gripping her own heart, looked to Jake for reassurance. It struck him then a stark realization that whatever lay ahead wouldn't just test their courage, but might redefine everything they believed about family, love, and hope. Jake took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next, but what if the truth he discovered wasn't what he expected? The doctor's gaze locked onto Jake, and the air in the room became thick with tension. I need to speak to Tommy's family, he said, urgency dripping from each word. Jake could feel the mother's grip tighten around her chest, her face paling as she swayed slightly. Is he okay? She managed to croak out, tears pooling in her eyes. The doctor's brows furrowed, as if the weight of this moment pressed down on him from all sides. He's stable for now, the doctor replied, but his tone hinted that this wasn't the end of the story. But we need to discuss some options moving forward. Please follow me. Without waiting for a response, he turned and strode back through the swinging doors. Jake watched as the mother reluctantly followed, fierce determination fighting with fear on her face. He felt a pull to go with them, to offer whatever support he could, but he hesitated. Sarah was still there, clutching her stuffed bear, uncertainty shadowing her features. Jake knelt down to her level. Hey, it's going to be okay, he said softly, trying to instill some calm in both her and himself. You're so brave. Can I ask you to help me send some good thoughts to your mom and Tommy? Sarah blinked, and after a moment, she nodded, clasping her bear tighter. Okay, she replied with a small but determined smile. In her innocence, he found a flicker of hope, a reminder that even small gestures could carry immense power. Jake stood up and glanced back toward the emergency room doors that had just closed. He knew the tension was far from over, and they were still engulfed in uncertainty. Let us find a place to sit for a moment, he suggested, leading Sarah to a nearby bench. As they moved, soft sobs floated from some of the other waiting families, punctuating the sterile atmosphere with raw emotion. The sights and sounds swirled around him, merging into a cacophony of heartache. A few minutes on that bench felt like an eternity. Jake kept an eye on the doors, waiting for the mother to return, every passing second stretching his nerves tighter. He glanced down at Sarah, who was focused on rearranging her bear's fur as if it held the secret to the world's calm. Children are so strong, he thought, a flicker of admiration igniting in his chest. But then he felt a pang of guilt slice through him. Was he strong enough? And what if the truth bore down on them with a weight they couldn't bear? Finally, the doors swung open again. The mother came back, her steps unsteady, her face a reflection of disbelief and loss. Jake sprung to his feet, dread pooling in his stomach. As she began, her voice nearly cracking, but she faltered, tears rolling down her cheeks. They don't know what's causing his symptoms. The tremor in her voice sent a shiver through Jake. What does that mean? He asked cautiously, stepping closer, grateful for the little girl still beside him. Her presence felt grounding. She took a shuddering breath. It could be serious, but they're trying to figure it out. Her voice drifted off, burdened by unshed fears. That means there's still hope, Jake urged, reaching for her hand. Tommy is a fighter, right? We won't give up on him. She nodded slowly, but doubt lingered in her eyes. What if he needs something we can't give him? The question hung heavily in the air, like a cloud threatening rain. They all stood on the precipice of uncertainty, the fear of what lay ahead chipping away at their resolve. Jake squeezed her hand tighter, trying to convey support, a promise. But in that very moment, a nurse came back, her expression neutral, but her eyes betraying urgency. They need you in the consultation room, she instructed the mother, and without waiting for a reply, gestured toward the door. As they moved toward the consulting room, Jake felt a strange tug inside him. Had he just made a promise too big to fulfill? With every step, he understood they were not just walking toward answers, but toward a reality that could forever change their lives. What would they discover when the truth finally emerged? Jake's heart quickened at the thought, could they handle whatever lay ahead? Inside the consultation room, Jake felt the weight of the moment pressing against him. The air was heavy with unanswered questions, wrapped tightly around the beating hearts of the mother and himself. The room was too white, too sterile, a glaring contrast to the uncertainty they were all feeling. He glanced at her, her eyes filled with that tangled mix of hope and dread. Will you be okay? He whispered, offering her that small pocket of strength as they both braced for what might come next. I don't know, she responded, her voice small but steady. But I have to be strong for Tommy. Before he could respond, the doctor entered, his brow furrowed, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He greeted them with a nod, but there was an underlying seriousness in his tone. Thank you for coming. I have some information about Tommy's condition. Jake held his breath, sensing the tension tightening around them. The doctor began to explain the tests they had performed, the symptoms they had observed, and yet, his words felt like shadows dancing around the reality they faced. It's likely that we'll need to do further testing, the doctor explained, gentler now. We want to explore every option to get to the root of his condition. Will he be okay? The mother's voice trembled, that raw vulnerability slicing through the sterile air. We are doing everything we can, he reassured her, but Jake noticed the way his eyes flickered away, a telltale sign that things were still uncertain. The ache in his heart intensified as he watched the mother's composure start to fray. Outside the door, the sounds of nervous families echoed in the hallway. The weight of all their collective pains pooled in Jake's chest. He wanted to promise her the world, wanted to grant her the assurance that things would turn out okay. But he could feel the truth whispering fiercely life was rarely that simple. Then, suddenly, a small voice broke through. Jake turned to see Sarah standing just outside the room, clutching her stuffed bear as tightly as ever. She looked at him, her big eyes reflecting everything he felt: fear, hope, uncertainty. Is Tommy going to be okay? She asked, her voice quiet, but filled with a bravery Jake admired. In that moment, Jake felt an unshakable bond forming between the three of them, a shared understanding of struggle and love. It surged through him like a wildfire, igniting something deep within. He opened the door wider, beckoning Sarah to come inside. Join us, he said gently, squatting to her level. We're all here for Tommy. The mother's expression softened as she looked at the child who had been a part of this journey. Together, we'll be stronger, she whispered, the warmth illuminating a fragile hope. With Sarah by their side, they all sat, united in compassion. The doctor continued with his explanations, but one thing became clear together: they had the strength to face whatever lay ahead. In that shared space, fear shifted to determination. They would honor Tommy and fight for him, no matter the outcome. Hours melted away, blending into one another. Finally, a nurse appeared, her familiar face brimming with relief. Tommy is awake, she announced, and amid the despair, relief cascaded through the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. The mother dashed out, renewed hope rushing within her, and Jake felt his heart swell as he realized they might very well find their way forward. Sarah grabbed his hand tightly, mirroring his pulse of joy as they followed the mother into Tommy's room. There he was, alive and breathing, even if still weak. The mother knelt beside him, tears of relief streaming down her face. Jake stepped back, letting the moment wash over him. This was healing, tangible, life-giving, and infused with love. Despite everything, a connection had blossomed, transforming pain into strength. "Your son is a fighter," Jake whispered quietly when the mother turned to him. "And we'll fight for him, too." She nodded, understanding lighting her gaze. This was the turning point, a moment when loss met hope, and they could finally begin to weave their scars into a tapestry of resilience together. Days turned into weeks, and while Tommy continued to heal, the bonds forged in that hospital room grew deeper. The community rallied around them, sharing stories, offering support, and building something beautiful from heartbreak, crafting a narrative of transformation. Jake took on the mantle of mentor with renewed vigor, knowing he was not just a correctional officer, but part of something monumental. Together, they turned pain into action, creating programs for at-risk youth, inspiring others to join them in their mission. Tommy's name became a foundation for change, a catalyst that ignited not only hope, but a community united in love. As Jake looked out onto the smiling faces at the inaugural community event, a celebration of healing, hope, and love, he felt a profound sense of purpose fill his heart. This was more than redemption. It was real connection and transformation. And when he turned to see Sarah laughing with Tommy, who now wore a radiant smile of his own, Jake couldn't help but smile as well. Life may bring storms, he thought, but together, we can weather any tempest. This was love, the beautiful, messy kind that unfolds and grows, binding hearts together through every trial. And just like that, Jake understood this was just the beginning of a brighter chapter. Now is the moment for you to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that inspire hope and transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread these powerful messages far and wide. Comment your reactions and feelings about this emotional ending. Your voice matters. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this life-changing transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share the love. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the journey. Let's do it together.